Tommy Tiernan, welcome to Ireland Unfiltered.
Thank you.
You have a new DVD out, Under the Influence.
Which, it's not great.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. But I wanted to ask you, there's a blurb on the back from J. Richardson of The Scotsman. He says, a feral philosopher king, roaming the windswept hinterlands of his imagination, roaring at the magnificence of existence. Tommy Tiernan affects the timeless wisdom of a sage as he stalks the stage. Now, I would agree with that, but I was wondering, how do you see yourself?
Well, you can't. That's good writing. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily accurate, but I sometimes think that when reviewers are putting together their piece, they have an eye on the poster and the DVD, and they're probably saying, I wonder, what could I write that could possibly get printed? That's a great bit of writing.
It is great, but it's. I would see it as an accurate description of what you do. But I wonder, is that something that you feel represents what you do?
No, it's a trap. That'd be a trap, because you can't live up to something like that. A feral philosopher, Jesus Christ, where would you even start? It's hard enough to get into bed in the evening as it is without being burdened with. Can't go to bed, love. I'm a feral philosopher. No, the only thing that I've noticed recently is that I've been watching a lot of Billy Connolly, and so say in terms of this interview and stuff like that, I never see these things as separate from what I do. It all seems to be part of a kind of a way of passing time, which is trying to talk creatively, whether it be this or even a conversation with a friend or being on stage. It's all the same type of being, just using words and ideas and fantasies and trying to enjoy it, you know. I was watching Billy an awful lot, and then I started watching a bit of Jack D, who I think is really funny. But there's a huge difference between the two of them in that Jack gives off the impression of living an ordinary life, and he kind of steps out of it to report on it to a crowd. Whereas Billy just seems to be the living embodiment of what he does. There's something outside, you know, the great Bob Dylan line, to live outside the law, you have to be honest. There's something about Billy that is, he just seems authentic, and even if the show that you're watching isn't brilliant, you're glad to have spent 2 hours in this man's company. Jack seems like more of a writer. You know, he's at home, he's bringing kids here, he's bringing kids there, but he goes into an office and tries to write jokes. And I'm much more attracted by what Billy does, you know, even though I can recognise the brilliance of Jack's comedy, I'm much more drawn to that. So in these, so I spend a lot of time by myself, and I'd be quite, as my mother once put it, I'm a neurotic narcissist. And then you don't have to define yourself at all, but in long car drives, I think I would much rather lean towards Billy and that kind of thing of being a storyteller. You know, that makes sense or not, but the kind of that what I talk about on stage and who I am are the same thing.
Yeah, so when you say that, this is part of what you do as much as being on stage,
Totally.
But do you have any real separation from what you do and who you are?
Not really, no. I mean, I do sometimes. I think if I was starting off again, the only difference would be that I'd use another name.
Really?
Yeah, totally.
Why?
Because I think it would be healthier just not to have the same name as the person who's up on stage.
Do you think you would have been very different? Do you think if you had that different name, it would have changed a lot of what you did?
I think it would have freed me up a little bit to play around with character and persona, and seeing myself as, seeing who I am on stage as a third person with whom I could have, say, spent a few years as a born-again Christian, Just to play with the character.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I think Michael McIntyre would have been a good name to use.
It's taken.
So stuff like that, they kind of. In hindsight, I would have done that, but the onstage bit is the most. It's where the audience has a particular perception of you, and a particular expectation, and they're entitled to it. They paid 35 quid a ticket, so they're. And my fantasy life would be one where the gigs are free.
Right.
People don't pay. People pay to get out. It's free in.
It's very expensive to leave.
So there is that kind of contract. It's a great line from The Hustler movie with Paul Newman, where he says to the woman that they're both drinking an awful lot, and she's talking about their relationship, and he said, "This isn't a relationship; it's a contract of depravity." So there is a contract between myself and the audience. That's the most difficult part of it. But this now, us talking and me, both of us trying to be verbally creative and stuff like that, that's fun. And it's the same thing on stage, but this is easier. And this is no different from who I am.
And when you say they all help pass the time, is that something that you feel has to be passed by trying to kind of inject it with meaning or ideas?
No, I think it's as natural as breathing. I don't think it's a thing of how will I pass the time. It's a thing you find yourself doing. And rather than think of it as a career, it's just how do I naturally spend the days? Yeah. And I naturally spend them, lots of quiet time, a lot of time on my own, but really enjoying conversation. Now I say that, if my wife would say, "But sure, I can't squeeze 2 drops out of you at home. I love conversation." She would say, "You never talk to me." So I'd be professionally. I love the creativity of talking. Absolutely.
But do you find that those moments, whether you're alone or in a conversation, when you get an idea or something comes to mind, that it kind of creates a sort of worthwhileness of everything? Like you feel that's what it's about, like that's what life is about.
No, but I suppose, there's the things you do and the things you think. So you can theorize about it and say, objectively come up with a line like that. But the thing you do is natural. Yeah. It's not, I've started smoking cigars recently, and I have a shed down the back of the garden, and it takes about an hour to smoke a cigar. And I'm sucking on it, and these lines come to me, and I've always had this feeling, if it takes a drug, it takes a drug. That's the price. And I sit down in my shed with a treble espresso and a cigar, and these lines, and I might only get one line per cigar, but it feels like a wonderful way of passing the time. I came up with this one last week, which was, people often wonder, is there life after death? I wrote down, of course there is. It's just not your life. And that makes me laugh. I'm giggling down the shed at that, and that seems to me to be
a good time well spent.
A productive life.
But talk to me about that solitude then, and because you said before that the desire to connect comes from a place of solitude. Yeah. Is that the sort of paradox that you feel you're sort of dealing with all the time?
A place of, probably. And I love the solitude, so I drive around the country by myself. Spend a lot of time down the shed. That great line from Chinatown, where Jack Nicholson picks up the phone and the voice on the other end goes, "Are you alone?" And he says, "Isn't everyone?" So it comes from a desire to connect, totally, and the mass of an evening, the ceremonial thing about being in front of 1,000 people, and the ceremony of it. It's phenomenal, and really enjoyable.
Were you always comfortable in your own company?
Definitely always drawn to it. I think you kind of mentioned that you went to a lot of different schools. I was the same, so I got very used to being the new boy. I went to school in different countries. Like I started in Donegal, and then I went to school in Africa.
Yeah.
Do you know? And I was 3 years in school in Africa. Then I went to school in London. I went to school in Athlone. Went to school in Navan. Went to school in Ballinasloe. So that thing of being, the outsider and that feeling of not really belonging. And I love Navan. It's a great town of tension. You know, there's a statue in the middle of it of two lads wrestling a bull, and it's perfect. And there isn't a sliver of fat on the lads or the bull. You know, there's ropes and muscles, and it's perfect for the town.
What's the statue for?
It's just an expression of tension. That's all.
we need to mark this somehow.
Just erupted from the Navan mind. How can we best express what it's like to live here? And so I think Navan to me was always a verbally violent town. Never physically violent. There was an edge of it, you know, but in my life it never expressed itself.
Yeah.
But it was verbally tough. And I didn't realise how different that was until I went to school in Ballinasloe, and people in Ballinasloe just weren't as funny.
Right.
It wasn't as tense. They were just more relaxed and a lot more kind of easygoing and gentle, which is why Ballinasloe has never produced any great comedians. It just doesn't have that necessity. It doesn't have that collision in it. There's also a large psychiatric hospital on the outskirts of the town, which I always thought is great because it gives kids from Ballinasloe just another option. You know, if you don't do so well in the leaving, you go, fuck it, I'll go to Bridget's for a couple of years. That's always a thing, you know, when people were putting on the CAO form in Garbley College in Ballinasloe, some lads were down UCD, some lads were down St. Bridget's Psychiatric Hospital. So I think Navan definitely, but I do feel like an outsider in the town, you know, and I always have, and that comes from travelling so much, yeah.
But you always felt that wherever you were?
I think so, you know. I grew up I was born in trouble.
Right.
But I was born into trouble. My parents' house was a tough house.
Yeah.
It was a house full of tensions, like loaded. You know, my mother smoked an awful lot, and there was just this. So I was always more comfortable outside of the house than I was inside the house. That produces an energy in an individual looking for. If you're not getting the connection at home, where do you get it? I think as a people, Irish, we are a tribe. Maybe born in trouble. I think we've so many things, issues. We haven't faced up to the famine yet. Yeah. That sounds daft and you know a bit melodramatic, and it's an easy thing to say, but I don't think we have really. I don't think we've really. It's not something that we don't market commemoratively. It's rarely expressed artistically. It doesn't come up very often in conversation, you know. Yeah. There's that fantastic memorial down by the Three Arena of the skinny people heading towards Toronto. But that's about it, you know.
It seems to be kind of getting there now. There was Black 47.
Yeah, so that's starting to happen, isn't it? That's starting to kind of. But I remember reading somewhere that genetically, that kind of prolonged starvation has an effect on the body, and children who are born from that body would carry that genetic effect, and that lasts 2 or 3 generations. So physically, people who were born in the 40s and 50s in Ireland would have carried kind of a famine tattoo somewhere in them, you know. So all that kind of stuff is. So I think those two things, to be personally born into trouble and to be part of a tribe, that is, I think they kind of produce the need for connection. You know?
And, you talk about, like I've seen you say that you're still processing your childhood. And when you say that, what you say there, it kind of makes me think that, we need to not just process our own childhood, we also have to sort of start processing our parents' childhoods. Like, if we're trying to understand ourselves.
And forgive them.
Yeah.
And look for the same forgiveness from your own children.
Yeah. when the time comes.
Yeah. We can't always be pointing back to the people who reared us. All the way back to Adam. His fault. He's pointing at the apple. I'm processing a childhood sounds. That doesn't sound like an interesting experience. Reliving it, maybe. There's the ghost of your childhood is always there. Memories, and so I've been working up in Belfast a lot recently, and what I do is I drive on the motorway from Galway to Enfield, and then I slip left and I drive through Meath as far as Slane, and then I'm back on the motorway. So I've spent the past 8 or 9 weeks driving through Navan at night, and I love it. And I drove around the estates that I grew up. I was able to name houses, Kavanagh's, Hegarty's, Brady's, McGrath's, and great memories of a Navan childhood, great memories of my friends. And I rolled down the window one night and I just parked the car. And I wanted to breathe in the Navan air, and I realised that I didn't have a happy childhood. And that awareness came to me. It says, I did not have a happy childhood. Things were too tense at home.
And when you say tense, what do you mean?
Just full of anger and unresolved stuff. And, the only feeling when you've walked into a room and people have just had an argument and they've stopped the argument, but you can feel something. Well, our house was like that.
All the time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So you're aware of that. Now, I had that feeling and a realisation and been able to name it. I did not have a happy childhood. Yeah. But I was able to almost name it without feeling wounded by it or without feeling laying the blame at anybody. Without feeling angry, without feeling okay, that was my experience, without laying any great pressure on it. That was just the way it was, And then I drove to Slane.
And got angry again.
So that's been great. That whole thing of that's been great driving through Navan the past while. Actually, it's been really enjoyable.
But was religion or something, things like that? Was that something that came from that as well when you were young? Do you think there was a consolation there, or there was a peace there?
No, it was an adventure.
Right.
Because our house wasn't religious. There was no holy water. There was no photographs, no statues, no priest ever darkened our door. We weren't made go to mass. It was a house. It was a godless house.
Right, that was unusual.
It didn't seem unusual at the time because it's what you live with.
Yeah.
In the same way, the tension in the house didn't seem unusual. Yeah. Just when you went to other fellas' houses and you saw mothers hugging children, you went, "What is she doing?" And so, to me, religion has always been an adventure because it was never an orthodoxy.
Yeah.
It was just, wow, I wonder what this is about. And that also, I never really understood why people got offended at religious stuff that I did when I was starting off. Because I never carried that weight with me. I was never burdened by the manners that religion is supposed to put on you.
Yeah.
So I never thought I was attacking anything sacred. To me, it was just fun and adventure. And also, you don't want to be covering the same territory as your parents. You want to feel that the adventure is yours. So I think part of the religious thing for me was that my parents weren't religious.
And did you start going to mass on your own, like at an early age?
No. When I was about 16 or 17, when I was in boarding school, I started getting up in the morning at 7 o'clock to pray. And I would then, when everyone else went to bed, I would go into the prayer room by myself. And I had a tape one of the priests gave me because it was music from Taizé. And Taizé is this place in France where it's mantra stuff. So they sing this one line over and over and again, and you just go on some, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. I'd listen to this like 17 minutes of that, and you'd just be, you'd be tripped out of it by the end of it. You're floating back to the dormitory. So I heard about this priest then who moved out to the Aran Islands to set up a religious community, and I went out to visit him when I was 16, and I went to live with him then when I was 18. I tried to join the priesthood as well, but they wanted me to repeat the Leaving Cert, and so I kind of abandoned that. Right. So to me, it's always been new territory rather than anything else. It's great.
And like your parents, when you were doing that, did they have any say in what you were doing, or did they have any advice? No.
They were too busy. Some parents are too exhausted trying to survive one another. Yeah. What the kids do, right? Is just get out of the house. Yeah. I remember. So it sounds in a way irresponsible now, but so when I was 16, I told my parents I wanted to hitchhike from Navan to the Aran Islands to spend Easter with a priest in a cottage who started his own church.
But what time do you leave?
There's money. One. So there was no concern. There might have been concern, but there was no. Wasn't I was just allowed to go. Yeah, go for it. I wasn't even encouraged. Just like, right, gone. So there was never really. And when the priesthood that I wanted, the particular what they called type of, it was the Redemptorists I wanted to join, and the head Redemptorist drove from Galway to Navan to visit my parents to say, well, Tommy wants to join, and we'd be very happy to have him. I think they were just kind of taken aback by, does he? Oh, right, okay, fair enough. You're the first priest in this house, and the last. So yeah, there's never an issue, never. But that's great. I can see the positive sides of that. Yeah. I was given total freedom. I was 18 and I left the house and I moved to Galway and I signed on the dole till I was 26. Never any pressure from home. Get a job, go to university. None of that. And I see that now as freedom. Yeah. With my own children, I would have tensions with my wife in terms of, to me, that kind of upbringing feels like independence. To her, it comes across as neglect. So it's about what way. So I would always try to be, in her eyes, neglecting my children. I would always be encouraging them, do your own thing, get out of the house. Giving them brochures on monasteries in Thailand. What? Off you go. There's a tenner. See you Tuesday. So there's that kind of both sides of the coin there that you're trying to negotiate as well.
But is that something, like, how much of your childhood and your experience then has informed how you've been as a parent? Like, is it something you've been conscious of rebelling against, or is it something you felt because it worked for you, you'd like to see it in your children?
Well, you'd never say anything worked for you because you don't know how, you can't say for sure that it has. Everyone suffers. So I would definitely have that struggle with, so I have older children now, like in their 20s. Do I phone them every 2 or 3 days to see how they're getting on? Do I wait for them to phone me?
What do you want to do?
What I want to do, I think I want to be their friend. Yeah. And I don't think they want that. I think they have enough friends. So I do want to, it's funny, the main thing I want to do with my children is touch them. I want to, and I get great pleasure out of that, of just, putting my hand on their shoulder or their back or their head. To me, that's parenting. You know, so when my younger children are around the dinner table, I'd often just walk around and put my hand on their heads. I wouldn't say anything to them. Just touch them. And I love touching my kids. So I think that's what I want to do them. So I have a 25-year-old son, and I just want to touch him. But that's how do you say that? Dad, come on, just let me touch you.
But your father said, you told a story about when your father said, or you said I love you to your father, and he said, sure, why wouldn't you?
That's a true story. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Sure, why wouldn't you?
That kind of brought everything to a halt.
Yeah, I remember as well going for a pint with my dad when I was about 19, and I said to him, I am beyond your control. Right. And what I meant by that was I was in the West, he was in the East. And what I meant by that was you have no longer have a practical, obvious, daily influence on me. You know, I'm beyond your control. And a few years later, he brought that up again. You know, he said, "Do you remember that time you said that thing to me? Can I tell you what I felt?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Relief."
Right.
You know, I was. You know, so that's the thing as well. Jesus, okay. You know, I still haven't. That's the first time I've said that now in years. So, all those kind of things, his childhood, my children's childhood, they're all kind of, we're all trying to deal with each other. You know, so it's an active proposition.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, my uncle was telling me a story about my father the other day about coming home from school when my father was about 15 and seeing my grandfather hitting him over the head with a soup spoon about something, you know, and you're hearing this. I heard this for the first time. You're going, okay, that's something you kind of have to factor in. And then he said, well, my grandfather was sent away to school when he was 3, you know. So you have all these things that you're then, as you say, then you're bringing into your own childhood and then into your own children. And I was wondering, like, you know, with having 2 kind of sets of 3 children, like how different have you been as a father between the 2?
I think I was probably up. So I would have been in the same house as my older children until my oldest boy was 9. My son was 4 and my daughter was 1.5. So I think that I was a very selfish person. I think that I was. I mean, the act of leaving the house was a selfish act. And I think that what that did was that for the next 10 or 15 years, that means you bring to your parenting a sense of event. So I would have done more stuff with the children. I wasn't there as a daily father. But I was there. We saw each other every week, and I probably saw them as much as I see my own other children now because of my touring schedule. So saw them for a few days every week. But I definitely brought the sense of event with me. What are we going to do? So we did things like we started going to Anfield to watch matches. We went on holidays all over the world. Really, So, and I think that my older children would say that made me too needy. As I became probably too needy a parent. You know, I wasn't relaxed enough. I wasn't in the house all the time. You know, I was trying too hard. You know, and I think my younger children, I probably don't try enough. So I'm there 4 or 5 days a week with them, and I don't think I'm as needy with them as I'm with the older crowd. But you can survive all those things. You know, they're all motifs, and none of them are terminal. None of them will ruin your relationship, but they're things you can see and go, once you see them, you can go, all right, okay, maybe. But it's a constant worry. It's a constant factor. Does anybody ever know how to parent? You know? And like I said earlier on, the thing I love doing the most is touching them. Do you know, that kind of physical act of you know. I love wrestling with them. You know, there comes an age where it's no longer appropriate. But I love wrestling with my kids, you know.
And do you feel Arthur Matthews was on a couple of weeks ago, and he said he feels, parenting is like being Harlan and Wolf, like you're just building this ship to kind of send it out into the down the slipway and hope it doesn't turn out to be the Titanic.
Yeah, wow. No, I don't get that sense of.
No.
I get a sense of we're all in this together, and you know, I'm not. I've never learned how to build a ship. I wouldn't know how to build a ship.
Yeah.
My father wasn't a shipbuilder. It would be irresponsible of me to start building them now. So.
But does somebody have to build this? You know, if we keep going on with this metaphor, does somebody have to build a ship?
I don't know.
Like, does your wife build? Like, is she building the ship?
She's a shit builder. I don't know really. I think we're dead or alive. We are. You're always a ghost. So my father is a constant presence. My mother is a constant presence. My children are a constant presence. My wife is. We're ghosts for each other, you know. And you'll never not be haunted. And that doesn't mean, I don't mean that negatively. That those presences never go away, you know. So it's great that Arthur is able to come up with such a concrete, practical.
I don't know if he's sure he was concrete. I don't think he felt confident that he was going to build this ship.
Yeah.
But, that's how he saw it.
As long as it doesn't turn into a warship that just drives out and then turns back and just blows up the shipyard. So no, I see us all as ghosts for each other, really.
And your mother died in 2010, did she?
Was it 2010? Thank you for that. But so even though she died, I still think about her every day. I think about her as much as I think about my father, as much as I think about my children. So people are always with you, you know. So I might only talk to my dad on the phone once every 2 or 3 months, maybe.
Yeah.
But he's still an active voice in my head.
Yeah.
My mother is still an active voice in my head. You know, my 6-year-old. The thing of being alive and dead, it sometimes is. Yeah. It's almost. I don't say it's not irrelevant, but it's.
I know what you mean.
It's kind of. It's not.
It's not the.
It never. The relationship doesn't stop at death.
No.
So my relationship with my mother is still active, and still kind of ongoing.
Yeah.
You know. So that process is still alive. You know, in many ways. I can feel myself becoming closer to my mother as the years go by. You know, I can feel myself becoming more affectionate towards her. And in a way, the physical act of death, what does it change? I don't think it changes an awful lot, you know.
Except for the person who dies.
That's a fairly big. But in terms of your relationship with them.
Yeah.
You know, I still have a relationship. Yeah. With her.
But do you think, you said something about your ambitions changing as you become more aware of the reality of death.
Yeah,
I was wondering, is that part of that process too, that you, whilst you have this ongoing relationship, does the losses like that make you more conscious of death?
No, I think getting older does yourself. So what when you start off, when I started off doing stand-up, I was very ambitious for stuff like, I want to achieve this, I want to achieve that, I want to go here, I want to go there. And now it becomes more a thing of, how do I want to spend my time? You know, how do I want to do that? How do I want to spend the days? So rather than saying, you know, I want to tour America. Yeah. You know, wouldn't it be great to tour America? Tommy Tiernan does this, or you know, whoever you are, whatever you're. And I think, well, actually, do I? Yeah. Are those interesting days for me? I love driving around Ireland. I really love it. Like today I drive to Killarney. I'm looking forward to the drive.
Right.
You know,
You drive on your own?
Yeah, I love it. I just, to be in motion, I look forward to it. And so from a very practical point of view, in a way that's nothing to do with ambition, I get an awful kick out of that. You'd be aware sometimes, should I go to the Montreal Comedy Festival? Should I? Is it good to have my name? Blah, blah, blah. But practically speaking, will I enjoy it? You know, I think those things become more, as you get older, so I'm 50 next year, those things become more crucial to you. How do I want to spend my time? You know, and that seems to me, that's a positive to me. To be more ruthless. Don't want to do that. You know, so your ambition changes, definitely.
And is it also a recognition or a realization that if you get those things, it's not really going to change you fundamentally?
No, they're empty, a lot of them, you know. Once you stay in 1 7-star hotel, you've stayed in them all. Who wants to be alone in a hotel in America?
Yeah.
Jesus, no. You know, I'd rather be pulling into Topaz, getting a shit coffee. You know, I prefer that.
Yeah.
I love the engagement of it. I don't want to be hopping on an airplane. I hate touring England. I fucking hate it.
Why?
I just don't know. It's dead to me.
Really?
It's dead. I feel enriched by hedges.
Yeah. Is it driving on motorways? Is that?
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Now I have an English tour next year, so I'm kind of, in a sense, I'm looking for. Well, can I do it in such a way that I start to enjoy it? But I would play places like, you know, I did a gig in Claremorris recently, in the town hall in Claremorris, and the drive was so sweet to me, and the gig was fantastic. Talking to the people before the show, after the show, during the show, loved every minute of it. So in a sense, it's a very ordinary way of life.
Yeah.
It's not showbiz, really. You know, I would probably feel more in common with Nathan Carter than I would with, you know, Bill Burr or Eddie Izzard. So that's, and I love it though. I love it.
And it's the simplicity of it, though.
Yeah, the generosity of it as well, in the sense that the audience are there.
Yeah.
I'm not at the moment. I'm not struggling for a crowd. You know, I'm not. I've been in that situation. I remember one time we were doing a show in Birr in County Offaly, and out of nowhere, we had something like 90 tickets sold for 400 seats. And we're going, shit. You know, I don't mind playing to 90 people in a 90-seater.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. You know.
Yeah.
But 90 people in a 400 room, you kind of go, the odds are against you. So I'm grateful now to be able to fill whatever room I'm playing. And the wisdom then comes in choosing a room small enough to fit everybody. It's great.
Why did you stop drinking?
I stopped drinking because I wasn't drinking an awful lot.
Yeah.
But when I was drinking, I was drinking too much.
Yeah.
So I was kind of getting hammered. So that was back in the... When did I stop? 2003. So that's probably mid-Celtic Tiger.
Yeah.
You know, everybody was drinking.
Yeah.
You know, taking drugs. It was excess.
Yeah.
It was also, I was becoming well known. I was hanging out with people who were having this, so I started stand-up around 95. So I would have started with people like David McSavage, Jason Byrne, Des Bishop, Dara O'Brien. And we were all suddenly able to earn a living at this. It was really exciting to us, you know. And there just seemed to be drink everywhere. Comedy festivals were starting. It was just a porter fest of indulgence. And so I wasn't drinking every day, but when I drank to oblivion. And then, you know, as an adventure, not out of a crisis, as an adventure. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it was for Lent.
Right.
I think I said, I'm not going to drink now for Lent. And then I liked it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had 10 great sober years. They were fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
The clarity, waking up in the morning without a hangover, not regretting stuff that you might have said, being able to engage with people at parties up until a certain point. Never felt any pressure to drink. And then 2013, I just said, okay, let's start again.
Why?
I think sense of adventure. You know, 10 years is a long time to be off it. And I think just a sense of adventure. Let's give this another lash. Let's see if you can do it.
Right.
So I started drinking gently at first. I remember my first pint after 10 years was in a bar in Baltimore, in County Cork. A pint of Guinness. And my wife came with me. The kids came with me.
Turned it into an event. It's like your parents.
My sister came with me. We went down. And it was like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And my kids looking at me. God, he's amazing. Our dad is fantastic. The first beautiful creamy pint of porter. And my wife was a tear running down her face. I'm so happy for you. You know, it's like a man taking to drink after a long illness. The illness of sobriety. It was really enjoyable. And it's still, drink is still a danger. So you could never approach any drug like that with utter confidence that you'll be safe. So you do have to mind stuff. So I find anything more than 12 or 14 pints.
you know to stop then.
Yeah, you know. Because by that, it's lunchtime by that stage, and the kids have to be picked up from school and stuff. So I do watch the numbers, and I have erred a few times. But I will say this: a friend of mine nearly died. He was on a boat, and the boat capsized, and he was in the ocean. And he said to me that his life kind of didn't go by him in a flash, but he had this sense of looking back on things. And he said that he was happy for all the nights he got drunk.
Right.
He was glad that he had, I think the phrase he used, I was glad that I had extended and gone beyond myself in those evenings. Now there's chaos there as well, there's a price to be paid for it, but that's what he said to me. And I remember there was a man called Eamon O'Connor who used to run Ticketmaster in Ireland, who died a few years ago. And maybe a year and a half before he died, I met him in Miltown Malbay. I was doing a show down there. And the two of us got destroyed with drink, like properly. I was so drunk that the next day I was on my motorbike and I was riding from Miltown Malbay to Ennis. And it's a big, powerful motorbike. And I was going past kids on the side of the road, and they were going, the smell of drink off that man, something awful. So he died a year and a half after that. And I remember being glad that we got hammered together.
Right.
That there was something in the act of that you shared that was a kind of a bonding experience.
And you never got that with people when you weren't drinking?
No, it's not an either or.
Yeah.
It's an as well. And I'm not talking about getting drunk with everyone I meet. I'm talking about just those nights where you do get drunk and you can look back and go, that was a fine thing to do. And I went up to pay my respects to his family, and one of his sons grabbed the paw and he says, my father talked many times about the night you got drunk in Miltown Malbay. And I was glad that we had done it, you know. So so those nights don't happen very often, you know. And more often than not, being drunk isn't a celebration, you know. But so you carry those kind of things with you. I'm glad I got drunk that night. You know, I'm glad of it.
And when you drank before, when you stopped, like when you say you drank, you drank a lot. You didn't drink every day. Was that just as your career got successful, or was that always something that was part of you?
Well, I couldn't afford to drink when I was on the dole till I was 26. So we were back then. You get the dole on a Wednesday. You could get 4 pints for a £5 in Galway in the Crane Bar. It's about £1.20 a pint. We're getting £32 a week on the dole. Yeah. and a tenner rent allowance. So every Wednesday we could go for 4 pints in the Crane, and we had enough for a punnet of, it was called a 50-50.
Yeah.
It was a punnet of chips, half of it covered in coleslaw, the other half covered in curry sauce. And we could afford one of them on the way home. So that was my rhythm of drinking for years.
Yeah.
4 pints once a week.
Yeah.
Then when I started doing stand-up, you know, I had young kids at the time, so you'd be doing a gig and you'd get hammered with drink, and then you'd be home for 5 or 6 nights and you'd be minding your family. So, and it just seemed to, like I was saying to you, it was a time of great fun in stand-up in Ireland. It seemed new. It seemed like an adventure for all of us. The best known comic at the time really was Sean Hughes, and he was in England.
Yeah.
Dylan, I think, was over in England. Dermot was dead. So we had a sense of being a posse with no boss.
Yeah.
No one was in charge of us. There was no hierarchy in a sense. Everybody was at the same level. It was fantastic. It was real fun.
And did you feel in like as part of a gang then, or were you always slightly, again, the outsider?
The outsider because I was in Galway. So I was never part of the Dublin clique, which I think was great. I never got involved in tensions between comics. I always kind of arrived from the west on the train with this Connacht energy, you know. And so I remember I would do stuff like, there was a gig on in the City Arts Centre down by the Quays that would finish at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we'd drink there till maybe 3 or 4, and I wouldn't have anywhere to stay in Dublin. So I'd walked the streets until about 6, and then I head up to Euston Station, and they used to open the Galway train, the 8:30 Galway train. The doors would open about 6:30. Right. So you go up and you just get into the train and sleep it off. So, and I remember those days as being brilliant, you know, fun. But yeah, always on the outside, totally.
So you always had that kind of independence when you talk about like being apart from things. Did it give you that sense of thinking differently, being independent about how you viewed things compared to maybe a clique? Yeah,
but something happened to me last year at the IFTAs. I was very, very affected by meeting Shay Healy. And Shay said to me that his whole thing in life was working with other people. That's the thing that drove him the most, was the desire to include other people in your work. And I was at the afterwards. There's a kind of, you're sitting at tables in a darkened room having food, and he was staring at me, and it was I'm not good at putting it into words, but it was just this moment of something. He was eyeballing me. He was 2 or 3 tables over, and he was just, and it wasn't a thing of you're looking around the room and you catch someone's eye and you're looking at them for a minute too long. This was, he was so still, and I still carry that with me, and that is that thing of working with other people, which is why I enjoy doing the sitcom so much, is working with other people. I did a play earlier on this year.
And is acting different to comedy in that sense?
It's just a nicer experience of sharing things, of sharing things with other people. It's so much nicer. Stand-up is great, you know, and I remember when I started doing stand-up, first of all, the overwhelming sensation of all that attention and making people laugh. It's an opiate, like you're floating on it. It is tremendous.
Yeah.
And acting doesn't give you that, doesn't give me that. Acting gives you little glimpses of, you hit a moment here, but it's a much more diluted experience. You don't get that experience unless you're doing stand-up, that overwhelming one. So I feel like much in all as I'm drawn to working with other people, and that moment with Shay is still alive in me, and I think about it an awful lot. I know that the adrenaline in the stand-up is very hard to let go of.
And why was he looking at you like that?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I can qualify it. I can wrap it up in another story. A couple of weeks before Buddy Holly died, he played in Minnesota, and Robert Alan Zimmerman, age 17, was at the gig. When Bob Dylan talks about that gig, so Buddy Holly died a few weeks later in a plane crash. It was the last gig Buddy Holly ever played, and Dylan was standing 16 or 17 years old, 2 or 3 rows back, and he said, Buddy Holly looked at me. I mean, he looked at me, and something happened. So I can, it's all a load of wank, like. But in terms of storytelling, you kind of, and self-obsession,
It's good.
It's good. It feeds the ego.
What did your mother call you? Neurotic narcissist?
Yeah, she said it to my wife the night before we got married. So I can.
But do you think there's because people seem to be drawn to you, and I was reading Gay Byrne about you the other day, talking about how he's inordinately fond of you.
Yeah, a lot of old men are. I swear to fuck, these old lads, just him, the president, there's a few other ones, they're just mad for me. I'm an attractive proposition to older gentlemen.
Well,
I have always been. Men, just older men, always just, they like to touch me.
Not any of the men we've just mentioned. We should probably
No, but the president, I have great chats with him. And it's always, it's not shocking to people from Ireland, because we live in such a egalitarian society.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody. But sometimes if he phones me and I'm with English people, it's the president. Michael, how are you, Tommy? Is that he starts all his conversation with saying, I pick the phone and I go, hello, because it's a ID withheld, unknown number. I know it's him. I go, hello, and he says, is that Dr. Tiernan? So yeah, I've always been, and I enjoy their company.
Yeah.
Very much so. But I've always been.
But is there a protective thing there from them?
I have no idea. I couldn't. Without a lawyer present, I couldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. But I very much enjoyed their company. Talking to Gabo and Michael and there's a few others as well. Really.
And do you do you feel there's a kind of mentorship or a father figure thing there from your side of it?
Maybe, but you'd be afraid of destroying it by trying to understand it. You just the company of it, and the storytelling of it, and I'm blown. Michael D's intellect is astounding. The stuff that he's able to speak fluently on and knows about, and the way he's able to define things. Like, he was a sociology lecturer for years, and he gives these amazing speeches. The wisdom of the man is profound. And there's an awful, beautiful gentility to Gay Byrne that this is great. There's quiet in him, and there's fierceness in him as well. It's they're men that I love spending time with, rather than trying to understand it or just, and if they always ask to touch me and I let them, that's okay.
It's the price you pay.
Now, Tommy, now. I don't mind that.
And the Do you find that you escape, like the ways you used to escape now, football and things like that, or stuff, still stuff you...
In terms of watching it?
Yeah.
I think it's great. Okay, we've all been seduced. So I'd be a Liverpool supporter, and we were all... There's an ad running on LFC TV at the moment, and it's basically, it's a very emotive ad narrated by Jurgen Klopp, and it says, "This means more. Other teams are a club, we are a family. They have songs, we have an anthem. They have managers, we have guardians. This means more." And I'm seduced by that. I'm seduced by the hope that Liverpool are more than just a football club. It's a wonderful thing to share with my children. All my daughters and sons love Liverpool, and we gather in front of the television and we get to go to Anfield 2 or 3 times a year, and it is a phenomenal experience for all of us. And I love it. It's an opportunity to roar and shout at the television.
And you had a season ticket for a while.
I had a season ticket for a while, but Jesus Christ, it was the worst thing anybody ever gave me. You're getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to travel to Liverpool on a freezing Saturday to watch them draw 0-0 with Wigan. Come on, that's tough. So we only choose the glamour matches now.
Right, yeah.
It gives me something to talk about with my boys as well, you know. And from a personal thing as well, I love running.
Right.
That's what I do. Yeah. I really love running. I'm trying not to get too... when I started running, my ambition was to be able to leave the house and run for an hour. And you can get all caught up in times and weights and speeds and training. That for me is the thing. If I can get out, and I run when I'm on tour as well. And I remember arriving into Swindon at 1 o'clock in the day and going for a run. And Swindon is a bleak place, but the ability to run for an hour in it just to change my relationship with the place. So I love doing that. I really love it.
But it's solitude as well, another solitary thing.
It's solitary thing, yeah. Is there a unifying theme here? Yeah, it is solitary, and yeah, I don't like running with other people. I love that. I don't listen to. You see a lot of people listening to podcasts and stuff. I love just the effect that the running has on my body, and the awareness of that this will be the best that I feel all day, running in the rain on the outskirts of Swindon from one roundabout to the next, and that feeling of tired, adrenaline, struggle, fresh air. It's wonderful.
And when you watch Liverpool TV, you subscribe to Liverpool TV, that means, yeah. So you when you watch it, you buy into this. Like, do you find yourself, because you mentioned in the DVD about, you know, these guys screaming at these guys who you don't really give a fuck about us. Yeah. But like, do you find yourself thinking that maybe actually this time Suarez does or Salah does, maybe they do really care?
That's their business, in a sense. It's my fantasy. What you want to see is effort. Yeah. That's what you want to see. As any fan of any club, you want to see them trying. Klopp said something very interesting. He said that they have a duty to perform. They have a duty to be the highlight of the fans' week. And if the manager feels like that, you'd hope the players do as well. They have a life of great indulgence and privilege. And what we ask of them as supporters is that they try. For the 90 minutes, they try. And if they try, we'll reward them. But I think you get that in the GAA as well. I get as much a kick watching the Barna United under-10s as I do from watching Liverpool. Right. My daughter's starting to play soccer, and she plays Gaelic. All my sons have played sport, all up basketball, soccer, Gaelic. And I love watching their matches. You know that thing they say, if you can do the stuff as an adult that you did as a child, it increases the likelihood of happiness. So when I have great memories of being a child and going to Park Talton in Navan to watch club matches and the Meath senior football team play. I love that stuff. I lived beside Pearse Stadium in Galway for a few years. I loved it. Loved going to watch club matches, inter-county matches. I adore it. Best thing I ever bought myself in recent years was a season ticket to Croke Park. And I go to as many matches as I can, and I adore it. So it doesn't have to be glamorous. It can be Barna versus Kinvara, under 11 girls. You know, standing in a freezing pitch on a Sunday morning. I love it.
Did you watch much of the Ireland football team? What did you think of Roy Keane's time as assistant manager?
We're all attracted to him as he's like Danny Dyer in EastEnders. This'll be good. You know, very attracted to him as an individual.
Yeah.
You know, drama. Again, it's just looking for drama. I wouldn't read any books about him or anything like that, but I just find him a compelling figure. But that's his own business, you know. Wouldn't have much of an opinion on the Irish soccer team at the moment. The adventure seems to be gone out of it. Yeah. It's in neutral at the moment. You know, the obvious thing is the passion of the rugby players, and that's enjoyable right now. But like I said, the Barna under 14 boys game against, you know, a team from Connemara, I love it. You know, I love the community of it. I love the talk and the dads, the roaring, the shouting, the skill, the tears, the celebrations. Kids are brilliant now. 11-year-old kids. Celebrations. You know, my son scored, I have a 6-year-old son, scored a goal in training. He scored the goal and ran around the side of the pitch going, brilliant. But I remember as a kid, the only person who had a celebration was, remember Mick Shannon.
Yeah.
And his one was the arm, going like that. So I remember doing that as a kid, you know. Kids probably remember the old generation probably remember the shearer one.
That's right.
Of both hands up like that. But yeah, so I was so funny. He's 6 years of age. There was a girl in goals. Just scored. And
Who had somebody been giving him a hard time? Was he?
Not in the slightest. Somebody do that. Some Firmino did it. Right. You know, and they practiced the Ronaldo one of running, jumping, turning, and they practiced that one and the dab and all that. It's great.
Do you feel as confident about saying the unsayable in comedy now as you always have?
No, what I've noticed is that I speak in public as if I'm speaking in private. And there's that shared, I've never really had that awareness of speaking in public. I've never been interested in it. The adventure to me is saying the private. Yeah. That's where the progression is. That's otherwise it's too careful. And as long as I have that, I think it's a source of energy. Yeah. So that's what I do. So in terms of saying the unsayable, I've never even approached stand-up like that. I was talking to Roddy Doyle last night, and he was talking about how the other thing he writes, the 2 pints thing. And I was saying to him, you know, some of the comedy in that is wild. And he said, well, you can do that if it's a private conversation. That people have chats with their friends where they say the unsayable. You know, with their closest friends. They say the wildest, funniest, sexist, racist. It doesn't mean they're sexist, racist people. It just, but there's something just lively about it. And it's accepted in a way that's not, I've done a disservice now by saying sexist and racist, because that's not what I mean. I think I just mean unguarded. Yeah.
But is there a lot more, people feel they have to be guarded an awful lot now?
Yeah, sure they do, you know. But that's never been my, maybe it's a flaw in the sense that it's attention seeking and it's a bit immature and it's, you know, it has consequences. But that's always been the thing of speaking in public as if I was in private. I think that's what I do. up on stage or here, or, I think that's what I do.
And because it doesn't seem like it's an attention-seeking thing, because you've said as well that sometimes you've got this sort of self-loathing about stuff you've said, or
Totally.
so like it isn't a kind of I don't care. I'm just as if you'd given yourself another name or this alter ego. You are wounded when you feel you've.
I'm more bothered by stuff that I've said than anybody else is. I remember once coming off stage, and I had been talking about somebody, and I was just, for about a week, I was going, you went too far. Excuse me, you've gone, that was really, shouldn't have said that. It was cruel. It was laugh hunting at their expense. There was meanness in it.
Yeah.
And I mean, staying up late, not being able to fall asleep till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
There's badness in you. And I got handed a recording of the show. And I hadn't said half the things that I thought I'd said.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I said was flippant and easy. So that happens.
That happened a lot. Versions of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a thing, an interview yesterday, and I went up to my wife afterwards and I said, I shouldn't have said that. She said, well, what? That stuff about my dad, I shouldn't have said it. Oh, Jesus, he'll hate me. And she said, what are you talking about? It was totally fine. So there is, so you do pay that happens.
Yeah.
Of where it happens.
But is it more to do with, I'm interested as much as what makes you feel as what the details of what you say are. So that sense of kind of beating yourself up over something is still pretty present in you.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'll have regrets about this interview.
Yeah.
I'm having them already.
I can see that.
So, I wish I was more careful. Yeah,
but if you feel that if you were more careful, you would lose something more essential.
I think you have to be honest in the moment.
Yeah.
So every moment that arises, you kind of go, something comes into your head, and you go, yeah, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay. In the moment, you make those decisions. Afterwards, you kind of go, fuck. But I'm honest in the moment, totally.
Tommy, that was great. Thank you.
Pleasure. You'll never walk alone.